I don't know how, guys, but I managed to lose Mickey Mouse just standing randomly in the forest, and I somehow managed to lose him. I don't even know what to say, really. But, you know, since the camera's still rolling and, you know, I'm still outside and everything, may as well get a game I've been meaning to talk about off my chest finally. It's a game that's honestly been highly requested, even since when I basically left YouTube. And I think I'm finally ready to talk about it. Since I really do suck at any sort of segues, I have no other way of introducing this game other than just jumping right in. Sonic Forces. Initially unveiled to the public at the House of Blues, where Sonic fans, including myself, were still recovering from the reveal of Sonic Mania. Although that didn't stop Sega from revealing their last big surprise for the night, the announcement of Sonic's new 3D title being in the works since Sonic Generations. And as the lights dimmed and the trailer started to play, one thing was extremely obvious. Sonic Forces was different. Sonic Forces seemed to have brought back something that has disappeared from Sonic games as of late: a focus on plot and story. We were greeted to dark, ominous text, shots of destroyed cities, Sonic looking extremely pissed off. For once, it seemed like this was going to be a more serious take on the Sonic franchise, and it seemed like the perfect game needed to balance out the previous kiddie plots of Lost World, Colors, and Sonic Boom. And I'm not gonna lie, I was extremely excited. Finally, a game that appeared to bring back the tone and feel of the adventure games. In fact, it wasn't just the trailer that led me to draw the connection. Lots of the advertising for this game put a big focus on Chaos returning from Sonic Adventure 1, along with the concept of Shadow returning to the side of evil, which in a way essentially ruins the character arc he's been having for years now. But honestly, Shadow was at his best when he was a villain like in SA2, so I was on board for a change. Even posters and game advertising made it seem like you had a choice to join Sonic in the Resistance or become one of the Eggman Empire, implying that there was some sort of hero and dark story. So is Sonic Forces the next adventure-inspired game the marketing made it out to be? Is it the spiritual successor to Sonic Generations and the games before it? Let's find out. As always, we begin with a plot summary, which this time starts with Eggman's side of the story, with typical evil villain monologuing, explaining to the audience about how he hates Sonic and how this time he will win. It's also where we find our first look at Eggman's new creation, made to defeat Sonic. We are then thrown into gameplay as Sonic arrives in Green Hill once again, only to see that it's
looking a lot more like Sand Hill right now.
That line was pure cringe. The writing in this game is atrocious, just let me say that. I can already see a lot of you Sonic fans rushing towards your keyboard to tell me that Warren Graff only translated the story this time and he didn't write anything original for this installment. And yes, for the most part, he did just translate the story, although there are certain points where Graff's writing sticks out like a sore thumb. Either way, Sonic runs past Green Hill, and it is only then that we are given our first real piece of story context besides Sonic and Tails' intercom banter. Eggman has begun leading an attack on the city, terrorizing its civilians. Sonic then shows up in the nick of time to stop him, and just as he begins to attack, he's interrupted by
Shadow, Metal, Chaos, Zavok,
and a new character that we later find out is called Infinite. Sonic, being the cocky son of a bitch he is, rushes in, hoping to get a hit, only for Infinite to dodge completely. And only 5 minutes into the game, and I already have a massive issue with this game's story, and it's the pacing. It's all over the place. Here, let me explain. Infinite dodges Sonic's attack. Tails then responds to this by stating that Infinite seems to be faster than Sonic. 3 seconds later, Infinite knocks Sonic into a wall, only for Tails to immediately retract his statement and say that there is no way that Infinite is faster than Sonic. Why do you say that, Tails? Looking back at the cutscene, Infinite did nothing suspicious or even that special to prove that it has to be something else other than simply being faster than Sonic. Tails, are you that confident that it's impossible to be faster than Sonic? Are you completely forgetting that Sonic has had several rivals in the past that have managed to be on par with him? Why are you immediately throwing out the possibility that someone can match or even surpass him? Especially when this all happened in the matter of 6 seconds. I could maybe understand if Infinite was teleporting or slowing Sonic down, but looking back, it just looked like Infinite simply sidestepped out of the way. Honestly, it looks like Sonic's move was so telegraphed that Infinite was able to counter. The other problem with this story is that sometimes the writers try to bring in something new only for it to be immediately taken care of in the next scene. When something with stakes is introduced, it's immediately gone and gives you no proper time to realize the actual threat surrounding these things. We'll see a lot of this in the game, but for now, let's keep going. Sonic then gets gang raped by all these villains who have a weird glitchy effect surrounding them. Sonic is then defeated, and we cut to black, and get some generic white text that states that several months have passed and Eggman basically took over the world. And holy shit, I guess that's it. Review over. E-rank. As much as I wish I could end the review like that, unfortunately, I'm contractually obligated to not do that, so let's continue. The text fades away and we cut to the perspective of the Resistance, who through exposition state that after Sonic was defeated, Eggman's forces took over most of the world, 99.9% of it to be exact. Although the Resistance has one secret weapon up their sleeve. You! They introduce your very own original fan character, and now it becomes your job to save the world. Meanwhile, we cut to Tails, trying to fix Omega until he's suddenly encountered by Chaos Zero. Tails, utterly powerless and scared for some reason, pleads for Sonic to come rescue him. And I know, everyone at this point has asked the exact same question I'm about to ask, but why? Why does Tails need Sonic to defeat Chaos Zero? Now that I ask this sudden headcanon just suddenly appeared in my mind. Tails is scared, due to the fact that after letting Sonic do so much of the work, now he has grown overly dependent on him. And now he can't even function without some sort of version of Sonic being there with him. Sure, it sounds weird, but this isn't the first time Tails has pussied out of doing something before. I think that we just have to accept that the badass Tails that had character development in the first two adventure games is gone. He no longer bothers to fight enemies anymore because Sonic is always there to do it for him. And all he's good for now is flying the tornado and making translators to talk of aliens. Tails is saved by classic Sonic, as we get a glimpse of him appearing out of the wormhole created in Sonic Mania, which leads him into this hellhole of a world. After one-shotting Chaos, Tails, now wondering why he isn't dead, turns around to see classic Sonic, and...
Wait, what? Oh, you're that Sonic from another dimension, aren't you?
Yeah, you heard that. For some reason, classic Sonic isn't from the past anymore, but rather a different dimension. When the fuck did that happen? Last time the gang saw him, he was clearly from the past. And especially the way that Tails just casually said he's at Sonic from another dimension. Did I miss something? Did Modern Sonic have another adventure with classic Sonic that I didn't know about? You just gotta love that retcon. A pointless one at that. I guess it's one way of separating classic Sonic from modern so the Mania series can continue without affecting the modern set of games. But it's so weird that literally the second time classic Sonic appears, his backstory is suddenly retconned. I guess it doesn't really matter, considering that Classic Sonic is basically here for the lulz. Seriously, Classic Sonic barely does anything in this whole game but be another Sonic. You can't add anything to the plot vocally, and that combined with the fact that your OC, who we'll call Buddy, is another silent protagonist, makes 2 out of the 3 characters you play as completely mute. Both Buddy and Classic Sonic simply do what they're told and are basically the Resistance puppets. But at least in Buddy's case, he actually partners up and interacts with modern Sonic on quite a few occasions. Classic Sonic, meanwhile, is basically not part of the main plot at all. Instead, him and Tails have their own subplot for like a quarter of the game that consists of trying to find Sonic. And once they are all reunited, the plot immediately revolves around modern Sonic and Buddy again. Which makes me wonder why he's even in this game to begin with. Considering the fact that the last time he had appeared in a game like this, he was such a big part of the story. And now here they are, lazily throwing him into this game, only using him to potentially draw in more buyers who like Sonic Generations and Sonic Mania. Either way, you heard me say modern Sonic earlier, did you? Well yeah, spoiler alert, he wasn't killed. Instead, it turns out Eggman has been torturing him for months, and it becomes Buddy's job to get to the Death Egg and rescue Sonic. And while this is happening, we actually cut to Sonic, who's looking surprisingly normal for being tortured for months. The damage Buddy caused to the Death Egg managed to turn off Sonic's energy handcuffs, just in time as Zavok appears to defeat Sonic once and for all. After a quick pounding, Sonic meets up with Buddy, escapes the Death Egg, and manages to join back with the Resistance. And honestly, this is where the story becomes not that interesting and kind of consists of a lot of back and forth, repetitive actions with little reward. Force's story is told through a mission-based structure. So before each level, you get a briefing detailing what has to be done, as well as commentary by the many different Sonic characters through intercom. And while in a way it's nice to hear different thoughts by different Sonic characters, I can't begin to tell you how much of that commentary is telling Sonic that enemies are approaching or telling you to be careful. Kind of makes it annoying by the end of a stage. Throughout the game, there are several encounters to be had with Infinite, as well as Eggman. Sonic and the gang eventually manage to figure out the secret behind Infinite's power, which is the Phantom Ruby. Essentially a device that through the power of virtual reality, forces the mind of whoever is affected to believe in the illusion so much it becomes reality. Which now that I think about it, does that mean that Sonic Mania never really happened? Cause if all the Phantom Ruby does is create illusions, then when Sonic was teleported to Green Hill and other stages, does that mean he's actually been tripping on virtual reality this whole time? I think I'm probably just looking too deep into things, but once you finally get the explanation behind the Phantom Ruby, it does make you look at things differently. After a few missions, and as Sonic slowly starts to take back the conquered world, it's finally time for that climax, as Sonic and the Resistance finally decide to take on Eggman's army head on. And I have to say, seeing all of Sonic's friends helping out in the final battle made me genuinely excited. Seeing Knuckles one-shot Zavix, Silver holding enemies in place for the Chaotix to knock out, and even seeing Amy bashing things with her hammer made me happy inside, but also made me realize what a waste these characters are. For once, we finally see them do something and actually try to help Sonic, but they're still not playable. During the battle, when Sonic and friends seem to be getting the upper hand, Infinite decides to throw the sun at Sonic. The fucking sun! A Phantom Ruby illusion of it, but still the sun regardless. While everything seems hopeless, the Phantom Ruby prototype Buddy got early in the story starts activating. This leads Buddy to go towards the sun and use the prototype to cancel out the effect. Once the sun illusion is gone, it's time to face off against the weakened Infinite. With help from Buddy, Sonic manages to defeat Infinite, as well as successfully destroying the Phantom Ruby reactor. Although, in true video game fashion, Eggman had one final trick up his sleeve, using the Phantom Ruby to power up his new Death Egg robot, which surprise surprise is another copy-paste of the Sonic Colors final boss battle. Sonic, Classic Sonic, and Buddy are the only ones left to defeat him, and with the real superpower of friendship, they triple boost and destroy Eggman's machine. With Eggman defeated, Classic Sonic starts fading away as he goes back to his own world. And now all that's left is to rebuild from Eggman's reign. Sonic and Buddy fist bump, then run off into the sunset, and the credits roll to a song that honestly comes out of nowhere. So, let's start with the positives. One thing I do like about the story is that it seemed like they really try to make it a prominent part of the game. Unfortunately, the story they tried so hard to make you notice was without any sort of substance, content, or any stakes. And honestly, I think what really ruined the story was the setup they had for it. We basically start the game with Sonic defeated, captured, tortured for months, and then after just 2 stages, he returns like nothing happened. Almost like being captured was just a minor inconvenience. That is also combined with the fact that when Sonic does return, there's basically nothing that stops this from becoming as samey as other Sonic plots. While the premise might be a bit darker than what fans are used to, the actual tone of the game and interactions between characters still feel more like games such as Colors and Lost World. This game's tone is inconsistent throughout this whole experience, because while there are some silly, lighthearted moments of typical cringy dialogue, there are moments where the edginess can actually cut your finger.
None of this is good, Vector. That's why it's called war.
The story's pacing can also be terribly jarring at times. Stuff like Infinite's first encounter, which I mentioned earlier, as well as Sonic's capture and torturing. But something also of note is null space, the most useless plot point I have ever witnessed. Earlier in the story, Sonic finds Eggman, only to be caught by a secret trap, null space, which is stated by Eggman to be a dimensional void where nothing exists. Eggman uses null space to capture Sonic and Buddy, trapping them for 20 seconds. Because as soon as Sonic and Buddy enter null space, they double boost and immediately escape.
Sup, everyone? I missed this place.
What happened, Sonic? You two just up and disappeared.
Nothing happened. Literally.
Ha ha ha. It's funny, cause nothing actually happened. Bad pacing aside, Sonic Force's story also suffers from having weak, useless characters, like Classic Sonic, who does absolutely nothing. His arc is non-existent, through most of the game he only contributed to the subplot, and he's just kinda there at the end to help Sonic and Buddy finish the fight. It's almost like they decided to add Classic Sonic in there at the last minute, and the writers were struggling to find something for him to do. And by the end of the game, they tie everything up in a little bow, as the morale of the story basically becomes, if we're friends, then we can do anything. I get that it's a kid's game and you want to send a good message, but in my plot that involves a conquered, destroyed world, enslavement, and death, In an edgy Mephiles ripoff, the last thing I want to hear is
Wrong, loser. The things that can't be defeated are heart, soul, and the bonds of friendship.
if only you guys knew how much I cringed at that exact moment. And honestly, I'm not hating the end of the game simply because of the friendship moral. Sonic Team just doesn't really know how to end a story in a way that's either not cringy or completely cheesy. The story in this game just has too many problems to ignore, especially since this game's story is plastered all over the place. Briefings before stages, in-game cutscenes, commentary over intercom. It's a nice way of keeping the story in the background, but the story is just so tasteless and bland that actually drags down the experience.
But at least we got the boring story out of the way. But honestly, at this point I'm realizing that we have barely scratched the surface. In fact, there's a lot we still need to cover in this game. And most importantly, the gameplay. Oh boy, the gameplay.
There is a lot to talk about when it comes to the gameplay. Let's begin with a simple explanation. Sonic Forces, like games before it, for the most part, still reuses the boost gameplay from Sonic Unleashed, along with the classic Sonic gameplay from Sonic Generations, accompanied by a brand new style of gameplay for your custom avatar. And I just have to say one thing, they are all terrible. So let's begin with the least terrible one first, Modern Sonic. And what the hell, man? What did they do to you? Modern Sonic still has the boost, slide, and homing attack like in previous games, but all similarities end there. This Modern Sonic has been stripped down severely from past versions. For example, any extra moves like the drift or lightspeed dash have been removed in favor of simpler gameplay, which could be a good thing depending on the execution. This would mean that the game itself would test the players more on their actual control over Sonic instead of using the correct moves at the right time, which for kids could be better. Also, Sonic still has his air boost from previous games, which actually has gone through a significant buff, as now Sonic can use it to travel long distances and basically fly depending on where you use it. But the worst thing done to Modern Sonic, and all the characters for that matter, is the change to the control. First off, the acceleration in this game is through the fucking roof. Moving the analog stick forward makes each character do this slow startup jog for 2 seconds, only to get a speed boost so randomly fast that they literally become impossible to control. The acceleration isn't smooth in the slightest. It's like as soon as the analog stick is pushed in one direction for a certain period of time, the characters are basically put on a rail, which I'll admit, it isn't too different from how Sonic has controlled in the past. In fact, the same thing applies to Sonic in Generations and other boost titles, where if you go faster, it's obviously harder to control Sonic, because he tends to go forward in more of a straight line. The only thing is in Generations, it was a much smoother transition from different speeds. In Forces, the shift in speed is just so great and sudden that it makes Sonic very difficult to control, and I've missed several jumps during precise platforming sections due to a slow startup speed not giving me the proper momentum to make a jump, or completely overshooting the platforms due to a sudden speed boost. Overall, Modern Sonic's control has been dumbed down for simplicity's sake. But this practice backfired on them, as this new, simpler style of gameplay made Sonic much harder to control. His acceleration is wonky, and it's clear that this Sonic was made to run in a straight line, even more so than previous games. And while lack of control is a bad thing, it's kinda funny that it's completely fitting with the god-awful level design in this game. I'm sorry, I try to keep the level design out of things till later, but there's no way around it. The level design in this game is straight trash, and it makes the experience of playing Sonic Forces extremely mediocre. I'm not gonna try to sugarcoat it. Stages in this game are literal straight lines, with very little to challenge you. Enemies are bowling pins and don't even try to attack, even if you're right in front of them. Alternate paths, aside from some classic Sonic stages, are almost non-existent, and stage length has been cut down severely. It's almost a joke, going through stages like Lost Valley with little or no player input aside from the occasional jump button and the tilting of the analog stick, and still manage to get an S rank. All within a minute as well. And I'm not even kidding with it being within a minute either. Stages in modern Sonic games have been shrinking in length, usually ranging from 2 to 3.5 minutes. Now you'll be lucky if a stage goes on past 2. I've already complained about stage length briefly in Sonic Generations, mainly due to how they cut a 5-minute stage into a 3-minute one. But with Forces, it's just aggravating seeing the action start ramping up only for it to end awkwardly. Honestly, the stages end when they really shouldn't. I was honestly surprised during Morga Canyon, the last modern Sonic stage in the game. A true test of skill, and something made to challenge the players. only to get boost fodder, platforming sections which are made a joke of completely overpowered abilities, and only 55 seconds into the stage and it just ends abruptly. What a joke.
Honestly, at this point, I feel like Sega's only doing this so they have more to advertise on the box, even though 13 more intricate, well-designed levels are always better than 26 incomplete ones. Just kinda makes no sense.
The worst part is that not even all the levels are original. Some stages are actually just slightly altered versions of others, which make these levels feel very uninspired and copy-paste. These stages also play themselves more than the players do. Stages are constantly bombarded with speed boosters, even in places where all you can do is move forward. God damn, look at them all, I can't even fucking move! Homing attack chains are also everywhere, and all they do is encourage just pressing one button to get over obstacles instead of doing actual platforming. And also, there's the springs. Springs are mostly found in classic Sonic stages, where instead of letting the players jump over obstacles such as spikes, here come the invisible springs that just pop out of the walls, the ground, and all they exist for is to annoy players and break the flow of the stage. Even the extra unlockable stages fail to impress, as they are bite-sized linear obstacle courses made to simply speed right through without giving any proper thought. While these complaints might feel minuscule, this complete automation combined with the very linear level design makes these stages very disconnected from the world they're supposed to be part of. While I was going through this game, I saw plenty of amazing looking backgrounds in places that you never actually go to. I'm not asking for an open world Sonic game, although that would be pretty cool. I just want a game that doesn't feel so boxed in. Or at least give me the illusion that there's more out there than just a level layout to truly give players that wow factor going towards set pieces and making the world look connected instead of it being just part of a backdrop. Look at those sand waterfalls, those platforms off in the distance, or that dark blue oil sea. Instead we get this. Honestly, I think it's time Sonic Team should try to change some of the things that have become normal in Sonic games, such as the use of automation and loops, or the fact that physics aren't really a big factor in level design anymore. But looking at games like Sonic Utopia and other Sonic 3D fan projects trying so many new things just shows how little confidence Sonic Team has in trying to do something different. Sonic Team doesn't want to change their formula because for the longest time it's been the one thing giving them success. But the funny thing is, it ended up backfiring on them, as that lack of change resulted in the complete failure of Forces. They got cocky. They saw that it was a boost formula game and immediately expected success. It's just frustrating seeing how close Sonic Team was in getting the boost formula right with stages like Seaside Hill Modern, Aquarium Park, and Jungle Joyride. So corners were cut, development was rushed, and stages were made more constricting, only for these new stages to look so bad by comparison. This is their first big failure with this style of gameplay, and at this point it might be time to shelve the boost gameplay entirely. It's not working anymore, or at least in its current state it isn't. It might be time for a change, something fresh and exciting which can make fans eager again to expect the next game.
Sorry to go on that tangent there, guys. Again, I got a little off track. But the good thing is that when I was talking about this level design and its many issues, it actually was going towards all the gameplay styles. Modern Sonic, Classic, and even the Avatar. Although, I'll get to the hybrid gameplay style in a bit since it is a little bit different. But there is one gameplay style I feel like I want to go a little bit more in depth on. And it is one of the most controversial gameplay styles to be introduced in the Sonic game as of late. And I think you guys already know what I'm about to say, but it's the Avatar gameplay.
When it comes to the Avatar stages, they're very similar to modern Sonics in terms of design. Still very automated, dash panel heavy, and don't really encourage exploration. The only big difference I see is the amount of enemies. They are everywhere, and while the Avatar does have a wire attack, which is basically a slower homing attack, the Avatar can hurt enemies by jumping into them, as they don't curl up into a ball upon jumping. So in a way, they are a weaker, slower, modern Sonic without a boost, something intentionally done in order to introduce the Avatar's gimmick in this game. Wispons, weapons that have different effects and ways of attacking depending on what you have. The Burst Wispon, my personal favorite, is basically a long-range flamethrower that when having the Burst Wisp allows you to do multiple jumps to reach areas you normally couldn't access. It's probably my favorite because it's the only Wispon that actually allows you to use it while running, something no other Wispon lets you do, and for that reason alone, I don't really use any others except for Lightning on some occasions. Speaking of Lightning, this Wispon is probably my second favorite, due to the alternate paths you can reach while using it. Collecting a Lightning Wisp allows you to do the Lightspeed Dash, and basically fly along trails of rings. And successfully attaching yourself to a line of rings and watching your character fly through them is actually really satisfying. although you can't use the lightning Wispon to attack while running, which of course forces you to basically stop dead in your tracks when attacking. It has tons of range and it makes things quick, but at the cost of making you almost have a heart attack whenever you use it on a platform. Why? Because every time you use it, you step forward in whatever direction you're facing. Basically like Knuckles and Omega from Sonic Heroes. You just end up sliding up all over the place, and falling off a platform is way too easy for comfort. As for the other Wispons, I rarely use them as the rest seem kinda pointless. Maybe only used to get the occasional red ring, such as Hover, which can blow enemies away and, of course, make you hover. Void, who can blow away enemies as well, although this time it's into a portal and it lets you teleport. There's also Drill. While initially fun because of the immense speed you can get, it does require that you stay completely still while revving it up. And the power it has is kinda lame. Just lets you drill forward through enemies and stuff. And here's the absolute worst Wispon in the game, Cube. Cube has always been one of the worst and most situational wisps, but this time, Cube is absolutely worthless. It's a slow, heavy hammer attack that when you first use it, it turns enemies into blocks. To then defeat them, you have to attack again, effectively making combat really slow, and the fact that you have to do an extra step to defeat enemies just makes it not really worth it. Cube also has one of the worst wisp powers in the entire game. All it lets you do is build a tower of blocks, making you only go up. It's absolutely pointless, and it's a waste of time trying to use Cube. As you can tell, I don't like all the Wispons, but one thing the Avatar stages have going for them is since there are lots of different Wispons with their own gimmicks and powers, it's safe to say that exploration and alternate paths are a little bit more encouraged with multiple playthroughs, as different Wispons allow you to either find new paths or find more efficient ways to beat the level. As for the base gameplay, it's still similar to Sonic's, but platforming is absolutely unbearable. I already talked about Sonic's wacky momentum, but multiply that by 5. The Avatar stages are the ones that I probably died the most on. Since it's slower, it's more platform based. And same thing with Sonic, that absolutely crazy momentum either makes me undershoot a platform or fly way over, resulting in plenty of deaths. And the jump, oh my god, the jump. It's so fucking stiff and so hard to control. Basically, once you tap that jump button, there is no going back. You have fucking committed to that jump. You won't be able to correct it, change it at whatever speed you were at when you hit that button means how far or close you land, and it's bad. The Avatar gameplay certainly is the most experimental of all the gameplay styles, and considering the fact that the Avatar is basically the second main character, it's clear that Sonic Team at least try to put the most effort into it. The Avatar has many different Wispons, along with countless equipable clothing, items, and different races of custom characters. Basically the Dragon Ball Xenoverse of Sonic. And I really wish I could like this gameplay. It certainly looks like it had the most work put towards it, and the customizability definitely has potential. But the controls and still very linear level design completely ruined it for me. Although here comes the actual worst gameplay style in the game, Classic Sonic. Again, he controls pretty similarly to the other characters acceleration wise. But one thing I'm just not able to do is platforming. His jump is ridiculously heavy, and since he doesn't have a double jump like Sonic or a homing attack ability at all, it makes his jump the second worst in the game. And if you've come here wondering about the physics, well, it's no Sonic Mania for sure. In fact, it feels kind of the same to Generations. Sonic still gains no speed down hills while rolling, and if you let go of the right analog stick, he stops dead in his tracks. Still so disappointing that after all this time, we still can't get improved physics. He has the drop dash though, of course to accentuate the point that he's the same Sonic from Sonic Mania, but I can't really say much else except that it's my least favorite part of the game. He's entirely 2D, which I'm not a big fan of in my 3D games. His stages do have some nice alternate paths, but Classic Sonic being so heavy and slow, it's not even fun trying to explore. In general, he just brings the game down, because he doesn't really do anything. He is definitely the most boring and bland gameplay style, he has little to no story involvement, and he feels just so last minute that it's annoying. Some of you guys were probably expecting me to say more, to explain my least favorite gameplay style, but I really don't have that much to say. And that, in many ways, is what makes it the worst part of the game for me. It's just boring and mediocre, and I think those are the two worst things you can have in a video game. And now, we get to the final gameplay style in this game, and honestly, I think this is the best one. The modern Sonic and Avatar tag team stages are some of the most in-depth and more exploration-based stages in the whole game. Well, most of them. Basically in these tag team stages, you are playing as both modern Sonic and the Avatar, giving you the best of both worlds. In a way, it's kinda similar to Sonic Heroes, although instead of an actual switch button, you toggle between them by using the respective abilities, such as using a Wispon or hitting the boost button. I would have preferred a dedicated switch button, but it does make things simpler using their abilities to switch. And of course, my absolute favorite stage in this game is actually from this tag team style of gameplay. Which stage could that be? Funny you ask. It's null space. Yes, the plot point that went nowhere was actually good for something, as null space is definitely the most expansive and fun stage to play in Sonic Forces. It's very Seaside Hill Modern-esque in the way it's designed, because like I mentioned earlier, Avatar stages can have many different paths due to different Wispons and different Wispon abilities. The Wispon paths, in combination of actual overlapping alternate routes, makes the combination of paths pretty big. There are so many jumps you can do here, or abilities you can do here to either save time, find a new area, and since Modern Sonic's air boost is basically broken now, there are so many crazy skips you can do. And one thing I can appreciate about this stage is that it's very lenient on invisible walls, basically making the stage your playground, and the only thing you have to worry about is the giant bottomless pit below the stage. Null space is probably the one time I can recall having fun, just seeing where these routes could take me or how I could save time by doing this or that, and sadly, this is the one time where I feel like the gameplay, setting, and level design all complemented each other. I kinda wish this tag team style of gameplay was actually given a much bigger spotlight, since basically it's the best of both worlds. You have Modern Sonic's speed with the Avatar's Wispons, and since they control basically the same except for their own abilities, it's a nice way of adding a gimmick to Sonic without making it part of him. I honestly can see a lot of potential from this tag team style of gameplay. I'd actually love a full game done with this hybrid sort of style. Granted, if the control does get fixed a bit, and the stages are built to be as open as null space. I really hope Sega sees the potential in this gameplay, but knowing Sega, Sonic Forces flopped, and now it's back to the drawing board. But I really do think the tag team style of gameplay has promise. In a way, it's like modern Sonic Heroes or Sonic Advance 3, and it's really fun to play. Unfortunately, the hybrid style of gameplay probably won't appear again. And also, stages like Null Space are a dime a dozen, as in Forces there isn't one stage in the game that can actually rival the joy Null Space was. Stages like Arsenal Pyramid, the previous tag team stage, were good, yeah, and it had some distinguished upper and lower paths, which made the stage fun to go through, but the beginning part of the stage was too linear, and didn't last nearly long enough. And while it was fun to use the Wispons to get to the upper paths, if you were just halfway decent at using the Wisps, you'll never fall to the ground, essentially skipping any platforming or challenge the stage have to offer. And the absolute worst part of the stage is the double boost. The double boost is a gameplay mechanic exclusive to these tag team stages, and they appear once in every single one, and to be honest, it just takes the fun out of the game for me. Sure, it's cool to see Sonic doing the boost of someone else, and it's crazy just looking at how fast you go, but when you're in double boost mode, you're basically invincible. You just blast through any obstacles in your path, and these sections are completely automated. And when I mean automated, I don't mean, oh, well, you can't really do as much as you can in regular gameplay automation. I mean, you can literally put the controller down and not even skip a beat, something which I find incredibly dumb. In Arsenal Pyramid, you need the double boost to scale the pyramid, as Sonic speed alone can't do it, so fine, I can accept that. But since the boost gauge is depleting, that implies that if you run out of boost, you'll either lose the double boost mode and fail, or just straight up die. So, to test out how automated these sections are, I ignored enemies, rings, and everything that could fill up my boost gauge to see what would happen. And absolutely nothing. Even with the gauge completely empty, Sonic and the Avatar still scale the side of the pyramid without skipping a beat. As a brief summary surrounding the gameplay, it's mediocre. Modern Sonic and the tag team gameplay are easily the best styles to play as, although even then, compared to previous games, they're pretty underwhelming. Controls are wonky, unresponsive, and are just overall worse, all due to the simplification of the controls, which didn't help in the slightest. The Avatar and Classic Sonic gameplays are bland, and both suffer from heavy and stiff jumps. And for Classic Sonic, the most fundamental part of the gameplay, his physics, are still as broken as they were in Sonic Generations. And the Avatar, while having replay value with different Wispons and customizability, some Wispons are borderline useless. And the Avatar still has the very basic and linear level design present throughout the entire game. And aside from having a Wispon, nothing really stops the Avatar from appearing to be a slower, weaker, modern Sonic. As for the stages in this game, they leave very little for exploration, and while some parts might be a bit more open, the rest of the level consists of more of the linear corridors that absolutely plague this game. It's disappointing seeing gameplay styles that were so appreciated when they were first introduced, only for them to go through a significant downgrade in quality and presentation. Mechanics were scrapped in favor of simpler design, but it just ended up contributing to this rushed and unfinished nature of this game. Very disappointing. And while we're on the topic of gameplay, there are still two things I forgot to mention: Episode Shadow and the bosses. I'm not the best at segues, so let's just go into Episode Shadow first so we can get it out of the way. It's a pretty standard DLC pack of 3 new levels that take place before the main game, essentially functioning as an origin story to Infinite and events to come. I'd explain more of it, but I really don't feel like it. especially since I just did a summary on a terrible plot, and I really wouldn't want to do one for an equally bad story, which just had some terrible cringy moments. And I don't know what happened, but did they run out of budget trying to make actual cutscenes for episode Shadow? Most of the story is told through intercom and it just looks cheap and lazy. Honestly, the best part about the DLC is that it lets you replay certain modern Sonic stages as Shadow, and I think that's really cool, and it totally makes sense. Gameplay-wise, he's a Sonic clone, but I'm glad we finally have someone other than Sonic that's playable. But I did say certain Sonic stages, right? Yeah, about that. Shadow can be playable in stages without any sort of cinematics, QuickTime events, or tag team stages, which I guess I can understand as it's better than nothing, but they really couldn't rig Shadow to make him work in QuickTime events. It just comes off as half-assed, considering they gave us the option for Shadow, but not in every single stage. And it's not like they're changing gameplay fundamentals to make him work in these stages either. He's a literal Sonic clone, so it makes no sense to why Sonic Team wouldn't put that extra bit of effort to make Shadow playable in every single stage Sonic is. As for the rest of episode Shadow, it consists of 3 already existing stages, which range from completely different level designs to basically being the exact same stage, just with some added boxes and enemies. And now, boss battles. I'll go through them really quick, as boss battles in this game are kinda lackluster and basic. There are several encounters of Infinite in this game, each with their own style. First is an Infinite encounter which looks straight out of Lost World. Tube level design returns, as basically all you do is catch up to Infinite to homing attack him. And the second Infinite boss is actually just a reskin of the Metal Sonic boss, where you are on a straight track and all you do is catch up to him and homing attack him. And you have the final boss. While having 2 sections for Classic Sonic and the Avatar to shine, reveals its true form, its final phase. You catch up to him and homing attack. Wait a minute. These boss battles are repetitive as hell. Not only are they a cakewalk, but the fact that practically the same exact boss battle was used 4 times speaks a lot about this game's creativity. I am honestly tired of this formula of running up to the boss, get close, and then hitting them over and over again. It was fun when it was first used, but after using the same formula over and over again, game after game, it really makes it lose its originality. Especially since every single boss battle, except for 3 exceptions, is the same fucking thing. This game is just incredibly lazy with its boss battles, and it's just mind-boggling. While there are more bosses to cover that don't follow this formula, they aren't that special. Zavix is just a waiting game on one big platform, waiting for him to drop down to strike. Egg Dragoon's fight is painfully easy, as his first form is yet again a repeat of the classic ball and chain, with the rest of the boss basically flinging back rocks. And the Avatar's Infinite boss battle is a 2D mess. The Avatar is so slow in avoiding obstacles, and the jump is just too heavy to do so. And then the boss battle gets more annoying because as soon as you get hit by an attack, the screen starts turning red, the illusions get crazy, it becomes difficult to avoid stuff. Which, admittingly, is a pretty cool side effect to having Infinite hit you, but it becomes annoying, especially in a 2D box where you have very little space to work with. Yeah, the extra content in this game isn't handled very well. Like I just said, bosses are very underwhelming and basic. And Episode Shadow is just so lacking, I feel like it shouldn't even qualify as downloadable content. But the worst thing Sega truly did to this game extra content wise was Super Sonic. Remember when Sonic Team actually tried charging $2 for Super Sonic, a transformation and feature that's been in almost every single Sonic game for free? I'm glad they decided to go back on that, but it was still a crazy time for Sonic Forces nonetheless. Gameplay aside, I think the soundtrack is actually something worthy of discussion. Something I've never really dedicated a full section of a review to, aside from a few compliments to certain tracks. But the Sonic Forces soundtrack is kinda hit or miss. Each character has their own style of music to accompany their stages, such as the more classic Genesis style tracks for Classic Sonic, which actually were pretty well done. When it was first announced Classic Sonic would have Genesis style tracks, it actually made me worry a bit. The last time Sega tried to make tracks similar to the Genesis was Sonic 4, and we don't talk about Sonic 4. Instead of bad, meowing synths, Classic Sonic has more of that bouncy classic style to it, and some tracks such as Ghost Town and the Death Egg tracks were great. Although some tracks like Iron Fortress just sounded so boring and repetitive, I just wanted to melt my ears off. Modern Sonic is the same style of rock we've been used to, although now synths are a big part of the songs, which at times sound great and at times sounds completely unnecessary. And overall, I think Modern Sonic has the best stage music, mainly due to the familiarity it brings as it focuses on the adrenaline-heavy tracks used to match Sonic's faster-paced stages. Now we enter controversial territory as I get to the Avatar, and I actually do like a good portion of the tracks present. more than I thought it would actually. One thing it does to differentiate itself from the rest of the tracks is that it's the one gameplay style that focuses on vocals in regular stages, which is something I wanted to return for years now. Each Avatar track has vocals and the style of music is, well, dubstep, which would have been fine for 2014, but it just sounds so dated. Dubstep is hardly in relevance anymore, and hearing tracks with nice melodies and instruments just start dropping beats that sound like a washing machine with a metal pipe inside just sounds so bizarre. And some tracks straight up sound like they belong on Monster Cat or something. Not the best soundtrack by a long shot. In fact, compared to other games, it's very dull and uninteresting, but I still think it was worthy to discuss it anyway, at least for all the different genres and styles of music that were used. And now, here we are. After all the controversy, problems, mostly problems, and mediocre gameplay, linear levels, weird controls, where does this game stand? My Sonic Generations review got enough flack for being too hard on the game, and honestly, if I had known how much worse it could have gotten, I would have been a bit easier on Generations, as Forces took the original Generations formula and just ruined it. Gameplay styles that should have been fixed and improved turned out to be unpolished and downgraded. The gameplay was just not up to par with the standards set by previous Sonic games or fan expectations set up by the success of Sonic Generations. Gameplay was dull, linearity plagued this game's levels. The soundtrack, while giving Sonic different genres to play with, ended up being far worse than other games. And the story was just an incoherent mess of plot holes and tonal issues. Is there really more you guys want me to say? I've explained myself very clear, probably way too much throughout this whole review. I'm done. I really have nothing else I can really say. This game gets a D. Even mods in the PC version, which did bump up Generations up a rank, can't save this game. Because while there are character mods and stage edits, it's nowhere near on the scale Generations had them, and I didn't even bother installing any, because the base game is just so uninteresting that it pained me to even launch the game one more time. Forces was just a step back in every sort of way, and I'm surprised how far this game fell from everything it was building up to. It was a dull, uninteresting, mediocre experience that failed to impress in any area.
Wait, I'm done? After all this research, recording, editing, scripting, I'm finally done? Oh, fuck yes. Oh my god, wow, this feels like a weight has just been lifted off my shoulders. I feel like I devoted my whole life to this and I'm finally done. I don't even know what to do. But you know what I should do? I should take a bit of free time for myself. Explore, find myself. You know what? I should definitely do that.
You know why? Because there's more out there that awaits us. There are endless possibilities and lost worlds to explore. I'm off. Fuck. Dude, help! Help! Jump! What the fuck? It's cold! Dude, just help! It's fucking cold! It's fucking cold!